Recently, there was this video of someone owning Ben Shapiro going around. This video seems to have been widely shared on social media and received a lot of likes and admiration. In the video, Ben Shapiro is having a little back and forth with someone who is presumably a college student. At one point during this back and forth, the person responds to Ben Shapiro's argument by interrupting him with a stream of irrelevant insults. Notable insults include claims that Ben Shapiro gets no pussy and can't make his wife wet. Many leftists thought this was just great. They thought Ben Shapiro had been crushed and defeated in the arena of debate. They were very wrong. This actually reminded me of the Destiny vs. Richard Wolff debate in the sense that so many idiot leftists were going on about how much of an own it was when their side ended up looking terrible. I think that this Ben Shapiro incident was really cringe. That is my first charge. Extreme cringiness. I obviously despise Ben Shapiro. He is a dishonest and immoral, transphobic propagandist. But that doesn't mean I have to endorse and adore anyone who insults him. I thought it came off as really cringe, and I think it made the left look bad. It made us look like angry morons who have no actual arguments and just jump to entirely irrelevant ad hominems rather than making actual points. The only people who liked this were people who were already left-wing. This is not useful for winning people over. It makes us look like we have no arguments, and it is just really cringe. It makes us look so desperate. I don't think ad hominems, that is personal attacks, are inherently bad, but they are often bad. Obviously they are not logical, but as rhetorical tools, they can have limited value. As I see it, there are two good times to use ad hominems. Ad hominems are useful as a complement for a rational argument, but only if the ad hominem is of some relevance. For example, calling someone a fucking idiot after crushing their argument with facts and logic can be a good use of an ad hominem. It complements a valid argument and adds a little more humiliation and a bit more of a rhetorical punch. It is actually relevant and strengthens a good rational argument rather than trying to make up for a lack of a rational argument. That is the first good use of the ad hominem. Complementary and relevant usage to add a little rhetorical punch to a point. The second valid usage is after someone launches an ad hominem at you. If someone launches a personal insult at you, then it can be rhetorically optimal to insult them as well. If you can insult them better than they insult you, and in a rhetorically skilled way, you can come off looking good. It can look like a don't throw stones when you live in a glass house type situation. They started it, and they ended up looking terrible. They decided to make it personal, and it was a mistake. This is the other circumstance in which ad hominems can have some potential. There may well be some other cases I have missed, but it seems that these two are the best times to use an ad hominem. The ad hominem that we are considering today did not fit into either of those categories. It was irrelevant, and it wasn't complementing anything. It was just irrelevant and desperate. In my view, it just came across as if the person had no good arguments and was really mad. The argument seemed angry, rude, desperate, stupid, and irrelevant. I really don't think this was a loss for Ben. The only people who think it was are a mixture of complete idiots and people who interpret everything through a highly partisan ideological lens. Whoever wins just depends on whoever they like, regardless of how the actual interaction goes. Of course, this is not to say the argument was evil or immoral. It is to say that it didn't make the left look good, and it wasn't an own. It was in fact cringe. Whether making the left look bad counts as immoral is up for you to decide. But I think we can be fairly sure that optically and rhetorically, this was not a win. Our side just looked angry, rude, desperate, and completely void of rational, coherent arguments. The college student actually offered some far better arguments, but now it is all overshadowed by this irrelevant idiocy, which was stated as if it was a crushing own, when it was really anything but. That is the first half of my analysis. In summary, I think this exchange was cringe, and not some kind of crushing win for the left. Now, I want to be even more critical. I want to talk about toxic masculinity. Shaming people for a lack of sexual success is unironically a textbook example of toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is, in short, the idea that expectations associated with masculinity sometimes materialize in ways that are harmful. A common expectation associated with conventional masculinity is hyper-heterosexuality. Aggressively shaming people for a lack of sexual success is undeniably a harmful creation of this expectation. The idea that a lack of sexual success is worthy of great contempt and a mark of inferiority is most certainly derived from this expectation. The idea that a lack of sexual success is bad makes a lot of people super insecure and self-hating. Furthermore, and most disgustingly, it enacts a social coercion, a social pressure to have sex. People should never feel any pressure to have sex. In my view, shaming people for a lack of sexual success is morally detestable behaviour and a textbook example of toxic masculinity. This is a moral behaviour, and I don't think the fact that it is being done to an immoral person makes it correct. An extreme example of this would be insulting Ben Shapiro for being a Jew. Ben Shapiro is bad, but that doesn't mean anything goes when it comes to insulting him. We should still have standards. There are some things we just shouldn't use as insults. Our insults should not be based on toxic masculinity. Our insults should not perpetuate harmful social ideas. The exchange featured a leftist invoking harmful ideas closely linked to toxic masculinity in an attempt to score some cheap points against a right-wing propagandist. This is a super weird thing for leftists to be praising. I think toxic masculinity is considerably less tolerable than bad rhetoric or bad optics. I think it is capital B bad, as opposed to small b bad. This kind of behaviour is unacceptable. But half the left will worship toxic masculinity whenever it is ideologically convenient, apparently. The exact same thing happened with the Will Smith situation just a few weeks ago, and it will happen again. The weird toxic masculinity present in this exchange requires more attention and condemnation, in my opinion. Giving it complete admiration is disgusting and dangerous. And that concludes my thoughts on that particular exchange. In short, the exchange was cringe and clearly influenced by toxic masculinity. It should not be viewed as some kind of glorious win, but instead bad rhetoric and an example of something we leftists are supposed to oppose.